So that's the theme of the shir, Bikur Cholim. We're going to look at a Gemara. A Gemara. Usually we're not super halachic. Obviously, and I got it this year is, obviously the stories of the Gemara and more of the moral lessons of a Gemara and less halacha. But this Gemara will enter us a little bit into the world of halacha. So the reason I wanted to do this Gemara is because this week's parsha opens up with probably the greatest mevaker chola ever. Hashem comes to visit Avram Avinu after his bris milah, and that's not where we learn that there's a mitzvah Bikur Cholim. Interestingly enough, we'll see where we do. We'll see even if what type of mitzvah Bikur Cholim is. But let's look at the Gemara. This is a Gemara in Nedarim. Nedarim is obviously a very, very difficult masechta. They say that the three hardest masechtas are Ani, Ayin, Nun, Yud. Masechtas of Eruvin. The Yud is Yevamos. And I'm doing the Mishnayos right now. In Mishnah Yomi, you do 2 Mishnayos a day, and you're up to Yevamos. It's very, very difficult, even the Mishnayos. Okay? And Nun, there's a machlokes what the Nun is. Is it Nida or is it Nedarim? So Nedarim is a difficult masechta. So here the Gemara says, Rav Chelbo chalash. Rav Chelbo became very, very sick. Nefak achrez Rav Kahana. And Rav Kahana went out to the town. He made an announcement, right? So nowadays, what does that mean? He put a mass email or a mass text, and he says, Rav Chelbo be'esh. Rav Chelbo is, Rashi says, he is sick. Rav Kahana was just spreading the news. He was just publicizing the news that Rav Chelbo was ill. So, lo ika de ka'asi. No one came and visited Rabbi Chelbo. Amar lahu. So he says to the people, Rav Kahana says to, I guess, the people in the town, Lo kach hayamaisa b'tamid echad mitalmidei Rabbi Akiva shechala. Isn't this the same exact story as when one of the Talmidim of Rabbi Akiva, he became sick? What happened? And lo nichnesu chachamim mevakro. And the chachamim, interestingly, the language of the Gemara, the chachamim didn't come to visit the sick, didn't come to be mevaker chola. Okay, so you have a story where no one is coming to visit the sick, the ill Talmud of Rabbi Akiva. V'nichnas Rabbi Akiva levakro. Rabbi Akiva comes in to visit him. Uvishvil shekibdu v'ribtzu lefanav, and because Rabbi Akiva, seemingly Rabbi Akiva, when he kibdu, l'chabed etzabayit means to sweep up the house. He cleaned up the room, v'ribtzu lefanav, and he poured water. The way the houses were, we're not going to get into this, but he needed to pour water to make some of the dirt on the floor muddy, to get some of the dust out, and he basically cleaned up. He organized chaya. So this Talmud lived, and he was sick. Rabbi Akiva came, cleaned the house, and he lived. So the Gemara then says, Amar lo Rabbi. He says, the student says, Rabbi, meaning Rabbi Akiva, Hechitanu, you made me live. You're the cause. You're the reason that I lived. Yatsa Rabbi Akiva v'darash. Rabbi Akiva exited and he expounded. He taught. Kol mi she'ein mevaker cholim ki'ilu shofech damim. Anyone who doesn't visit the sick, it's as if shofech damim. It's if you're murdering somebody. It's if you're killing somebody. That's story number 1. Story number 2. Ki asa Rav Dimi. When Rav Dimi came, meaning there were some people that would go. Rav Dimi was a ben Eretz Yisrael. He lived in Eretz Yisrael, but sometimes he would travel to Bavel to learn. Well, most of the Talmidei Chachamim were in Bavel, so he would go and then he would learn in Bavel. He would come and he would bring back some teachings back to Eretz Yisrael. Ki asa Rav Dimi, Amar, when he came back from Eretz Yisrael to Bavel, Amar, he said, Kol mevakres achol goron lo sheyichya. Any person who visits the sick causes that person to live. V'chol she'eino mevaker es hachola, and whoever doesn't visit the sick, gorim lo sheyamus. He's now causing them to die. Okay? No middle ground, right? Obviously, no nuance. Maybe it's the polarized nation that we live in, right? It's black and white, right? Okay, if you visit someone, they're going to live. If you don't visit the person, they are going to. So obviously, we're not going to take this Gemara at face value. seemingly the major addition of Rav Dimi is the first part. Rabbi Akiva just said, if you don't, it's as if you're killing somebody. Here, he's saying the positive also, that if you visit someone, you are causing them sheyichya. But what's the Gemara asks, what do you mean you're causing them to live? My grama, what is that? What are you doing that you're causing them to live? Ilema, if you want to say kol hamevaker esachola mevakish alav rachamim sheyichya, if you want to say that anybody who goes and visits the sick, what's going to happen? They're going to daven for them. Mevakish alav rachamim sheyichya. You're going to end up davening for that. You're going to request rachamim that the person lives. V'chol she'enu mevaker esachola, and if you don't go and visit the sick, so. You're gonna, if some weird way, if you don't visit them, it's gonna be as if you're asking them, you're requesting that Hashem kills them. Okay, obviously weird. So the Gemara says, do you really think that if you don't visit the person, it's as if you're asking them to die, you're requesting that their demise? Ella, no, rather. Well, this is what it means. If you don't visit the sick, ein mevakish alav rachamim. You're not going to be mevakish. You're not gonna daven for the person. Lo sheyichya v'lo sheyamus. You're not going to daven for the person at all, whether good or bad. We're going to get back to David, right? Right? It's this Gemara is actually very important for what you just told us. Okay, that's story number 2 of Rav Dimi, and Rav Dimi is bringing in this second piece of davening. Rava, new story. Rava, Yoma Kadma de Chalish, Amar Lahon, Lo Tigalu Leinish. The first day that Rava got sick, he told his inner circle, Lo Tigale, not to reveal that he is sick. He wanted to keep it a secret. Right? Why? The lo litra mazle. So not to worsen, not to negatively impact his mazel. What does the Gemara mean? So the Marsha says, what does it mean? If I tell you that I'm sick, it's bad for my mazel? Yeah, so the Marsha explains that there are 2 different Gemaras. We've definitely heard the line of one of the Gemaras, but the Gemara says that bris krusa lisfasayim. The Gemara in Moed Katan says that there's a covenant that was brought. There was a covenant that was made with my lips. Meaning, what? When I say something, it does create some sense of a reality in the world, right? Obviously, I can't say cup, and all of a sudden a cup is going to... But in terms of emotional stuff and other things, when a person speaks a certain way and they say certain words, or they say a sentence, or they declare something, it can create something. Bris crucilis vasayim, right? Then we have a different Gemara. Gabby always mentioned this. The Gemara in Brachos says, La'olam al yiftach peh la satan. Don't open your mouth to the Satan. Don't say something. Don't say that. Don't say that I'm going to die. Don't say that whatever it is, because words have power. There's an energy to words. So going back, that's how the Marsha reads that first line of the Gemara. Rava says that on my first day, I didn't want to tell anybody that I was sick. I didn't tell anybody that I was sick. Why? The lo litri mazale. Because the first day you're sick, sometimes it says you feel so sick, and the next day you wake up. It's a 24-hour fever, something like that, 24-hour flu, and you're good to go. But mikan ve'elech, meaning I guess on day 2, Amar lahon puku va'acharizu b'shukah. Go tell everybody. Go announce it in the shuk. Right? Go in Nei Yesharim they hold these paskavilim that they have, all these things that like this thing's usher and that thing's usher and this thing's usher and so you have or this person passed away. Here also say everyone that Rava needs tefillos because Rava is sick. Puku, go out v'acharizu b'shukan. Go announce it in the shuk. The chol disanili lichdeli, because anyone who hates me is gonna be happy. Okay, anyone who hates me is going to be happy. Very interesting. Rashi in Yisro says this. Lichdei here means happy. How does lichdi? We would say like lisameach. There are other words for happy. What does lichdi mean? So Rashi tells us that when Moshe Rabbeinu comes, when Yisro comes back in the beginning of Parshas Yisro to join the Jewish people, right? He brings back Tzipora and he brings back both of Moshe and Eliezer and Gershom, their children. So Moshe tells tells Yisro all about all the nisim v'niflos, all the amazing things that HaKadosh Baruch Hu did for the Jewish people, right? Amalek and Kriyas Yamsuf and the Makos and just the whole story of Yetzias Mitzrayim, all the miracles. And what happens? It says Vayichad Yisro. Yisro was elated. Yisro was very, very, very happy. So right, what is it? What's Vayichad? Just say Vayismach. No, it's also teaching me something else. That what the chidudim are like goosebumps, right? That sometimes you're very excited. You hear sometimes you see these videos. You see these videos of the soldier coming home, right? You get these soldiers that have been coming home for a day, and it's a surprise, and the mother or the children open the door, and you have a big smile on your face, and all of a sudden you have goosebumps on your chest, on your arms, right? You feel like so something there could be such a simcha that it's not just emotional, but it almost creates this physical reaction. But what does this mean? So anyone who hates me is going to, and the sunny is also the word for hatred. That's the Gemara in Shabbos, that whatever is hateful to your friend, right? What is hateful to you, don't do to your friend. Because the pasuk says, "Binfol oivecha al tismach." The pasuk says that when your enemy falls, you should not be happy. Udirach, right? You should be happy. So they say, God, they're going to be punished. They're going to be punished for being happy. That's what Rav is saying there. Udirachim liboy alai rachame. And so all the people that want to have rachmanas, they are going to daven for me. Rav is saying from the second day and on, I want people to start davening for me, because that is a real illness. Amar Rav, fourth story. Kol hamevaker es hachola, anyone who visits the sick is nitzol midina shel gehenim. Anyone who visits the sick is saved from the din, is saved from the judgment, of Gehenim. Shneimar, as the pasuk says, Ashri maskil el dal biyom ra yimaltehu. It says, fortunate is the maskil, is the thinking, intelligent, smart person, right? El dal biyom. Fortunate is the thinking person who thinks about the poor person. Biyom ra, on the poor person on biyom ra, on this bad day, he's going to be saved. Hashem is going to save him. Yimaltehu Hashem. You think about the poor person on that day, Hashem is going to save you, right? Ein dal, right? So now, first of all, Rav is now talking about the visitor, the person who's being mevaker chola, not the chola at all. The person visiting, that if you visit the sick, right, so you're going to be saved from Gehenim. And then the Gemara explains that a dal is not necessarily a poor person; it's a sick person, and biyom ra'ah is ra is Gehenim. So that's how he learns that out. Let's go to the last story, and then we'll look inside. We'll try to unpack these. Amarav Shisha, Bereider of Idi, Lo Lisod Inish Kitsira, Lo Betlas Shai Kedmaisa. A person shouldn't give food. I mean, a person shouldn't lisod, eat with, or visit a sick person, not lo bitlas shai kadmaisa, not in the first 3 hours of the day. Remember, when you're reading Aramaic, an Aramaic tough is very often is a Hebrew shin. So tlat is shalosh, really, right? You shouldn't visit a person in the first 3 hours of the day. V'lo betlas shai betzraisa diyome, and you also shouldn't visit them in the last 3 hours of the day. Why? Because so a person won't hold back rachamim from them. Why? Why would I not? Why would I not daven for this sick person if I go visit them in the first 3 hours of the day or the last 3 of the day? So the Gemara says that tlas shai kadmai, so the first 3 hours of the day, rav chadaite, they're healthier, right? A person is usually healthier in the morning. You always wake up and you're sick. You wake up, you're sick a little bit, but then in the morning, usually your temperature is a little bit down, and temperature usually spikes later on in the day. Basraisa, the last 3, takif chulshe, the sickness is stronger. Okay, the sickness is stronger, so therefore, so what's the Gemara saying here? What's Rav Shesha saying? Rav Shesha is saying, let's first go through the beginning of the Gemara, these 4 or 5 different stories, and then we'll get back to we'll go back to what's going on. First of all, we saw this Gemara last week, but where do I know that I have to? Where do I know that I need to do Bikur Cholim? Right? What mitzvah? If I would say no, maybe the Bahag is the only one, but most of the people that are the Monei HaMitzvos, the counters of the mitzvos, right? So it says I had bris milah. Okay, that's a pasuk. Honoring my parents, that's a pasuk. Matzah, that's a pasuk. Lulav, that's a pasuk. Mezuzah, that's a pasuk. Makkah, that's a pasuk. So I know that. Where do I know? Where does the Torah tell me that I have to visit the sick? That it's a mitzvah. That it's a mitzvah to visit the sick. So. You want to say? Ah, beautiful. So that's going to be our second opinion. So last week we saw one Gemara that the Gemara says very, very quickly. This is the Gemara in Sotan Yudalam and Aleph. What does the pasuk say that I have to walk after HaKadosh Baruch Hu? Achrei Hashem Elokeichem te lechu. To walk after God. So Gemara says, but we're going to go quickly because we did this last week. Can a person walk after the Shechina? How could I walk after the Shechina or with the Shechina? We know that somewhere else the Torah tells us that HaKadosh Baruch Hu and his Shechina is described as Ki Hashem Eish Ochla, as this all-consuming fire. So how can I walk after God? No, it says I have to be like HaKadosh Baruch Hu. I have to act. I have to emulate the midos of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Right? Mahu malbish arum, just like Hashem clothed the naked at the very beginning of the Torah. So I have to give clothing. I have to give clothing to people that don't have. HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Then it says here, HaKadosh Baruch Hu Bikur Cholim. HaKadosh Baruch Hu visits the sick. Where? From the beginning of our parasha, Vayera Elav Hashem B'leinu Mamri, on the third day after Avram's bris milah. So too we have to do Bikur Cholim. Hakadosh Baruch Hu is Menachem Avel, right? Hakadosh Baruch Hu comforts the mourners, and then it says the last example is that Hakadosh Baruch Hu buries his kover mason. So the first pasuk that might command me to do Bikur Cholim is that I have to emulate HaKadosh Baruch Hu, is the mitzvah of V'halachta b'drachav. Then the second opinion is exactly what Dr. Wilner said. The Rambam tells us in Hilchos Avelos, in Hilchos Avel, okay? A lot of these beautiful mitzvahs of Chesed, right? What does that fall under? What mitzvah does that fall under? So the Rambam is of the opinion that it falls under the mitzvah of v'ahavta l'reacha kamocha. Mitzvahs aseh shel divreim. It's a mitzvahs aseh levaker cholim, to visit the sick, ulinachim aveilim, and to we'll call it make shiva calls to comfort the mourner, ulahotzi mace, to take out the mace, to walk past the mace and to bury the mace, ulachnis kala, and to make sure that we have that girls can be able to get married, have enough money. Ulevayos orchim, and to hachnasas orchim. Right? Where do I have to hachnasas orchim? Hachnas orchim is another example. Datzing b'chotzarchi kavura, and to be involved in all the needs of the kavura. Okay, all these different things, right? And he basically says even the sameach chasen v'kala. When I go to a wedding and I have to do shtick and I have to glad in the chasen and kala. Interesting. This is l'sameach hakala v'hachasen. Interesting. That's not the way anyone talks. Okay, kala and chasen. It says all that falls under the canopy or the pasuk of v'ahavta l'reacha kamocha. Kol hadvarim shata rotze shiyasu otam lecha. Anything that I would want someone to do to me or for me, right? That I must do to others. That is the mitzvah of v'ahavta l'reacha kamocha. So Bikur Cholim doesn't have a pasuk. We definitely have an example of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The Gemara in Sota might say that you the checkbox in Shamayim that you get when you visit the sick could possibly be either the mitzvah of v'halachta b'drachav, to walk in HaKadosh Baruch Hu's ways, to emulate HaKadosh Baruch Hu, or the mitzvah of v'ahavta l'reacha kamocha. That's according to the Rambam. Okay, let's understand these stories a little bit with a little bit more depth. Obviously, the Gemara in Nedarim is telling us really the great worth or the great worthiness of the mitzvah of Bikur Cholim, to the extent that it suggests that it's even a life-saving endeavor. So first of all, we have this example of Rabbi Akiva. So when you read the Gemara in the third line, it's V'nichnas Rabbi Akiva levakro. Rabbi Akiva came and he visited his sick Talmud. Uvishvil shekibdu, and because the Gemara seemingly says they swept and they cleaned the house, right? So he lived. So there's really a three-way machlokas whether who improved the house. Okay, so either it's Reb. First is the Eitz. What's it called? The Eitz Yosef. He says Lifnei Aklachol Lebitzivi Rabbi Akiva, that Rabbi Akiva commanded someone to be mifakeach tzrachav umechayehu, to basically organize the room. That's the first understanding. That's the first understanding that Rabbi Akiva said, "Hey, I'm here. Clean the room because that's going to help him, right? So that's going to help him." The next example is the Meiri, that actually Rabbi Akiva took a broom and he took a mop and he swept it, right? So that's Rabbi Akiva. What's that teaching me? That's teaching me that there's no mean when you're doing a mitzvah. There's no task that's really like too menial, right? Too beneath the kavod or the dignity of the greatest sage of the generation, that know that you're going to do Bikur Cholim, you're going to do anything, you're going to help the person, right? Person go to the bathroom, whatever it is. There's nothing. Rabbi Akiva would have done that as well. He was sweeping the floor, he was sweeping the dirt, he was taking out the garbage, he was doing that. So I guess the lesson there is obviously like there's nothing beneath our kavod as well. But then there's a Meiri has a second opinion, which I think is such an interesting opinion. It says that the landlord, the language of the Meiri is v'yesh mefarshim shelechabdu sheRabbi Akiva kivdu asabayis. That there was a sick person, the sick student, and Rabbi Akiva is there, and the Meiri says that the landlord, whoever the balabayis, said, "Jeff, please go sweep up because Rabbi Akiva's here." Because Rabbi Akiva is here. So what I take away from that piece of the Gemara is ultimately the landlord has problematic priorities, right? Meaning it's just we're almost gonna Rabbi Akiva's coming to the house, right? It doesn't make it's not about Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva here is a servant. Rabbi Akiva here is at his service ideally. But the landlord has this like weird priorities that he cares more about Rabbi Akiva than the Chola. And then the general takeaway from the Gemara is that anything, first of all, anything a person can do to ease the pain and the emotional pain of a chola, right, is necessary. This actually is an interesting source for caring about a person's emotional well-being. Right? There's no doctor here. There's no medication that's being given. Not even chicken soup. Right? We're cleaning the house. Right? There's someone who's very, very special to me, who, when things are neat in the house, they're much healthier. They
feel better.
They feel better. But imagine, right? Imagine if your house is you're sick and your house is a pigsty, and all of a sudden it's clean. Your own physical health, right? Your own physical health is improved. So Rabbi Akiva understood that. Either he understood it because he did it himself, which is our second opinion, or the opinion that he came and he kind of called the shots and he said that people should do it. And that's an important aspect of Bikur Cholim. Bikur Cholim is not only, right? It's not only, and I would say with this by Nicham Avelim also, even though I don't have a source, but by Bikur Cholim, it's not about talking to the person and cheering them out, which may be the most important thing. You're visiting them, you're engaging them, you're saying words or saying you want to keep them in good spirits. But I think taking other pressures away, when there's someone who's running the food in the house, and they're also cleaning your kitchen, and they're making sure your kids have rides here, and they're making sure all these things are working, that you don't have to make sure. That's also part of the mitzvah of Nicham Avelim. Even though you're not sitting there and saying, "Tell me about your father, tell me about your mother, oh my gosh, I have this memory." There's another Nicham Avelim that's almost behind the scenes, which is really organizing the house. And that's what the first Gemara is telling us. That Rabbi Akiva had, of course, Bikur Cholim is the first and foremost sitting by the bed and cheering the person up. That's Aleph. But he's saying a second dimension, and then Rav Dimi is telling us in the second and third paragraphs a very, very, very crucial component of Bikur Cholim as well, which is tefillah. That when we hear that someone's sick, or we see or we visit someone, right, that we have to daven, right? And he's saying that he said such an interesting thing that What does it mean that he's at? What does it mean that if you don't visit someone, it's almost as if you want them to die? It says no. Kol she'einu mevaker chola. If you don't visit the chola, ein mevakish alav rachamim. You're not going to daven for him at all. So we just told him that your son got into a car accident, right? But it's okay. It's 6 months. Everything's going to be okay, right? So okay, hopefully I'll remember to daven. But I bet if I visited, and I'm sure his knee is like up, and he looks probably a little bit sick, right? Looks like whoa, that's like a big cast. So right now we just heard the story, car accident, this, that. Okay, but he's on the mend and it's okay, and it's not, he doesn't have something spreading inside his body, metastasizing. Yeah, he got hurt, and he got a car accident. It's going to be better. But I bet if any of us went and we visited him and we saw, holy cow, that's right, then we would daven that right. There was once you see the person, then you could daven better, and that's what Rav Dimi is saying, that extra component. If I don't visit, maybe I'm not going to maybe I'm not even going to be moved to. Maybe I'm not even going to be moved to tefillah. Then we have this case of Rava, where Rava is saying, which I think is it's an interesting thing. And I Baruch Hashem, I've been very lucky. No one's so close to me, that's not so many people close to me have been sick. But I'm always like, if someone's sick in my family, I tell people. Why? Because the more people that know, the more tefillos are going to be said on their behalf. I'm not chas v'shalom judging anybody, but when people keep things very secretive, you also have to realize there's less tefillah that's being offered on behalf of that person, and that's the Gemara is saying. So Rava was like touch and go at the beginning, not touch and go, but he wasn't sure. Maybe it's going to be a 24-hour or whatever, and I'll get better. But once he saw that he was getting sick, tell everybody. I need as many tefillos as possible. And that's what he was, and that's what he was saying there. And then Rav Shesha, right? Rav Shesha has this. So the beginning and the end. So why don't we at the beginning of the day, if he looks good, so maybe once again I won't daven so hard. And at the end of the day, if he looks so bad, I might give up. But I think what's very important, and it's interesting because obviously we're very, very fortunate because, with Nicham Avelim or with Bikur Cholim, we could always be Mekayim the mitzvah over the phone nowadays. But the reality is that if I can be Mevaker Cholim in person, according to these Gemaras, it's much, much more powerful, much more impactful, and much more beneficial, right, to my own tefillah probably, if I can go and actually visit the person. Obviously, if I can't visit the person, it's best to call, right? But and maybe now the truth of the matter is maybe calling doesn't suffice. Maybe you have to FaceTime or WhatsApp video, right? Because then you get a little bit more of a little bit better of a picture, right, or worse of a picture, which could help your davening, right? Which better or worse to help your davening. Let's go. I just want to say over two other quick ideas. First of all, there is a pasuk in Mishnah that says Ruach ish yichalkel machaleyu. That it's just awesome when Torah is like so ahead of modern science. Here, the ruach ish means the person's emotional state. The person's, if they're positive about it, if they have hope, if they're optimistic, yichalkel machaleyu will sustain their machala. Right, your emotional state, a person's emotional state, doesn't obviously dictate, cancer so much, but it gives them longer. The chances of beating it, the chances of living longer and spending more time with your family, there is part of that is in your rosh, is in your head. The Chavetz Chaim has a sefer called Ahavas Chesed, where he goes through a lot of the mitzvos of Chesed, and he says such a beautiful idea. He says at the very end of Parashat Shoftim, which is also the end of Masechah Sota, we have the mitzvah, a very strange mitzvah of Egla Arufa. That what's the mitzvah of Egla Arufa? That if there is a person, a dead body, a corpse is found immediately in between, or in between two cities, right? In the field, in between two cities, in between, I don't know, Lawrence and Woodmere, Okay, in between Englewood and Teaneck or something like that. So we don't know who this person is. So what do we do? Someone has to take responsibility. Someone has to take responsibility for this mace, for this corpse. So the Zakanim and the Chachamim have to go out and they have to say a pasuk. They have to say Yadenu lo shafcha as lo shafcha es adam hazeh. We're not the ones who spilled shofech. We didn't spill this, but it wasn't us. It wasn't us. Rashi says, quoting from this Gemara, meaning we know it's not the Zakanim. We know the Tzaddikim. We know that it wasn't the great rabbis that killed this person. So v'chi alsa alev, Rashi says, according to the Gemara, v'chi alsa alev sheziknei beis shofei dam. Does the Torah really think that the Zakanim were the ones who spilled the blood of this person, that they were the real murderers? Ella no. Ella lo ri'inhu uftarnuhu below mazonos uvelo levaya. No, they're responsible for his death. Why? Because they didn't escort him. They didn't give him food, and they didn't escort him. They didn't love and cherish and care very, very much about this person. So the Chavetz Chaim says, we have to take responsibility for a death of a person we didn't even know in Egla Arufa. So if a Gemara is making some pretty audacious statements about Bikur Cholim, these are people that I'm not necessarily I don't need to visit people I don't know, but people that I know, I have a responsibility to come and visit. I have a responsibility to be mevaker chola, right? And the Gemara says, if you don't visit, it's like you're killing them. What? You're killing them by people I don't know. The Gemara says that al achas kal v'chom there. If I know them and I don't visit them, it's an even worse. It's an even worse thing. So that I thought was a beautiful, beautiful thing. And then the last thing that I want to quote is that, which I don't really understand. But I'm going to read it anyway, and maybe you'll have answers, or maybe it could be food for thought. The Chazon Ish has a compilation of letters. So they're very, very short, most of the letters. And he says, Mina chova al ha'adam. So wait, I have a mitzvah to be mevaker this chol, and you have an obligation, a chiyuv, to visit this sick person. So he says, in addition, Min hachova al ha'adam. It's obligatory on a person lihishtadel b'refuat atzmo, to heal themselves, to take care of themselves, and to when they're sick, to do the best they can. Just like I have a mitzvah to make you feel better, I also have a mitzvah. It doesn't mean to stay healthy. It doesn't mean to eat salad and to exercise and not to smoke. That's what the Gemara is saying. When I'm sick, I still have to try to get better. Just like I have responsibility to take care of myself, refuas atzmo, just like a person is obligated, just like I'm obligated to heal another person. I should overcome any of my natural inclinations just to allow myself to get sicker. And he says a weird line, Vizu mitzvah gedola shel bikur cholim. This is, he says this is a big mitzvah of Bikur Cholim. He's not saying it's a bigger mitzvah than Bikur Cholim. V'zu mitzvah gedola shel Bikur Cholim. I don't exactly understand what that means. Just his language. I understand what he wants to say. He wants to say that I got to take care of myself, and once I'm sick, I just can't be throwing the towel. But it's a weird language. V'zu mitzvah gedola shel Bikur Cholim. This is the big mitzvah of Bikur Cholim, that when I get sick, that I really have to take care of myself, and I have to be.
So that implies that he could be Yotze the mitzvah of Akacholis himself in some category.
Right. I just don't understand what exactly that means.
If it's a big
if you have multiple personalities, one of your personalities can visit the other one. Right. I don't know. So care. All right, we'll continue.